Yo, I just want to show you a beer money app called Branded Surveys. You can earn from doing surveys, downloading playing games, and doing other various app offers. Now, I think the app is a little more geared towards doing surveys, and I know it's in the name, but there is a little perk that you have when you do surveys where it increases your earnings on all of your surveys, depending on like how many surveys you do. Now, even though they have this perk geared towards surveys and increasing the earnings and all that, I think the app is a little counterintuitive in a way, and you'll kind of get an idea of why as I go through the app. So let's get to my phone screen. Alright, really quick before I start, if anyone's curious on what beer money apps to continue to use or cash out from, I do have a monthly earnings section on my blog where I show what I cash out from every month. I do plan to make videos on this channel just talking a little more about beer money and what I plan to do with beer money, such as trading stocks, investing, crypto, and whatever else I plan to do with beer money. But those will be linked in the description if anyone's curious. Anyways, let's get to the review. Alright, so Branded Surveys runs on a point-based system, and the conversion rate is 1 point to 1 cent, or 100 points to $1. Now, something special that Branded Surveys does is they have these badges, which increases your earnings rate on all of your surveys. And to unlock these badges, you need to do a certain amount of surveys every single month. And there's 3 tiers. First is bronze, silver, and gold. To be in bronze, you need 2 surveys, silver is 10 surveys, and then gold is 25 surveys a month. To maintain these badges, you do have to do the amount of surveys every single month. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't do enough surveys on this app to really know when it pushes you to the next badge, but I assume that when you have done 10 surveys, it'll automatically push you to silver, or if not, it does that at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month. Now, these benefits are kind of nice. If you ever hit gold, you'll get 19% bonus on all of your surveys, which is a nice bonus, on top of what you're earning on the base. But you do need to do 30 surveys every single day to get the 19% bonus. As you can see, when you hit gold and you do 20 surveys, it'll put you at 17%, but if you do an extra 5, it will push you to the 30 or to the 19% surveys. Now, my problem with this is that I don't really like doing surveys, and the biggest caveat when it comes to surveys is that you do have a disqualification rate. And to qualify for these badges, you do need to complete the survey, meaning that you can't get disqualified, and even if you get to the end, you still can get disqualified, and you can usually tell when it doesn't give you any points, which is super annoying. I'm not a big fan of this, but it is here for anyone who likes to crank out surveys. Alright, just going back to the dashboard, right below your badges, you'll have your surveys. Now, one of the downsides with branded surveys is the surveys, and as you can see, there's only 3 surveys. This doesn't mean that you only have 3 surveys to do every single day. It's just, it only shows you 3 different surveys that you can pick from. Now, the annoying thing about this is that I've tried looking everywhere. Maybe I'm blind or I haven't looked hard enough, but I haven't found a dedicated page for surveys, especially compared to other survey apps that would have a dedicated page to show you tens or even 20s of different surveys that you can choose from, or even other beer money apps that just offer you surveys that aren't mainly a survey app that would usually have a dedicated page. Now, when you complete a survey, even if you fail it or get disqualified, or you do complete it and get paid, it will replace it with another survey. There are a decent amount of surveys that they give you every single day. But the problem is that you're kind of locked to whatever surveys it shows you. And it's just annoying because it makes it feel like you're forced to do certain surveys just to get other surveys out if you're only using one survey app. And if you get stuck with really long surveys that pay you very little, it is really annoying. Now, these surveys do rotate around every, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour, and some surveys will close and they'll replace it with another survey. So you're not locked to these surveys. It's just, it feels kind of bad to be kind of forced to do these surveys because there's no other way around it. So there is a weekly leaderboard on branded surveys where they'll pay the top 10 people who do the most surveys on branded surveys. And, the higher you play, or the more surveys you do and the higher you place on the leaderboard, the more you'll get paid. I personally wouldn't really recommend worrying too much about this just because there's always those handful of people who crank out surveys and do them even if they're not worth doing. And if you're a casual survey enjoyer, or you just don't like surveys in general like I do, you're probably not going to really make it up to this leaderboard, but it is a nice bonus to have. Alright, so there is another place where you can get surveys, which is the extra earning opportunities, just right below the offer section. Now, all of these are basically surveys, but they're kind of like I don't really know how to categorize it. But if you read the little like snap or snippet that it has, it'll tell you what the survey is about. Like if you look at the profile one, it just gives you more data on your demographics to get you hopefully better surveys and surveys that match your demographics. And in general, the when you get a survey that is more close to your demographics, you have a lower chance of getting disqualified because the survey is more meant for you. But there's some other ones like this TV studies one and some other ones. I typically don't like to do this section just because I feel like most of the surveys that I've done here are not worth doing. They're kind of long, at least the ones that I've done. And maybe I've just been unlucky or it's just the surveys it gives me. But, feel free to do these if you want, just to try them out and see if you get better surveys than I do. So branded surveys also offers another way to earn, which are offers such as game offers and non-game offers like investing apps or banking apps or just service apps in general. Now, they do run a 2x promotion every single day, and this is just my opinion, but I think I just don't see a reason why they have a promotion when it's run every single day. It's kind of like going to a store and you seeing like 90% off, and even after the 90% off, the price is basically retail price, and it's just like tricking your brain. I'm not saying that like all stores do this, but it just kind of feels like when they have a bonus that's run every single day all the time, it feels like it's a kind of scummy way to get people to do the offers. It's kind of like a FOMO thing, but I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but it's just my opinion. Now, just looking through the games throughout the week, I think they are pretty low. There might be like one or two or a couple, like small handful of games that are decently paying. Just to use an example of the puzzles and chaos, one of the reasons why these games are very low paying is there are very like small amount of tasks. As you can see, there's only 2 tasks for the puzzles and chaos. I usually see like 10 or 12 different tasks for this, and it would usually pay you, I don't know, like 40 times more than what it would pay you on here. And you also see that you have to complete this within 2 days, which is a very, very short time for completing these. Usually these would be a whole month to do just because there's usually a long like list of tasks that you'd have to do. And another problem that I came across when I did a game on branded surveys was the very slow tracking that it had. Now, usually this wouldn't be a problem when you have um like a longer deadline of doing this, but within 2 days, let's say you're reaching the level 10 of the castle on the second day, and it takes you a whole day for the offer to show that it completed, you would automatically fail it just because of the delay that it has for tracking for completion. And I'm sure you can hit up support and stuff, but it's just very annoying, and usually support just doesn't do anything about it just because it's just hard to prove, even if you have proof sometimes. Now, apart from the game offers, some of the other offers are pretty decent. I think the Chime one is pretty decent. The SoFi one is maybe a little low compared to other ones, but if you compare these prices to other beer money apps that offer the same offers, it might be pretty decent to do it on here. I don't really look at these offers, so I can't really say, but I'll eventually make a list on kind of where you'll get paid the most for these offers. At the very bottom, you do have a daily poll that you can do. I think this resets every midnight for everyone, and it's just super easy to do because you can't fail it and there's no like disqualifications, and you can, it's always multiple choice. So you're earning 5 points every single day from this, and it just takes like a second to do. Another thing that you can increase your earnings is this like location thing. Now I do have branded surveys on a separate phone that doesn't have a SIM card in it. But whenever I do this for myself or I try it for myself, I'll update the blog part about it just to say if it's kind of worth doing or how much you can kind of expect to earn from this. But just reading from this, it essentially will pay you for visiting certain stores. If you, not specific stores, but if you go to Walmart a lot or any grocery store, it will give you an ad that you can view, and then it'll give you a certain amount of points for it. I'm not too sure, just reading from what it says, but like I said, if I ever try this for myself and put on my main phone, or remember to, I will update the blog section about it. Now, onto the cash options. To get here, you're just going to hit more on the very bottom right, and then payouts, and it should take you to a page like this. The minimum requirement for cashing out is $5 or 500 points. And to choose your different cash out option, you're just gonna have to scroll down a little bit and then change your payout method. Now, there is an instant cash out option for branded surveys, but it requires having the gold badge, which is 30 surveys a month. I think it's a pretty hefty requirement. I typically don't do 30 surveys on one app. Usually I would do 30 surveys on like multiple different apps just because it's really hard to get decent paying surveys on one app for 30 different surveys. But anyways, if I counted correctly, there are 159 different cash out options, and they should have pretty much any cash out option you want. You know, they have PayPal, the bank transfer, Amazon, Walmart, and whatever else. Now, when I cashed out to PayPal, it took me about 1 day, even though it said it was going to take 3 days, so it's not too bad. You can kind of expect 1 to 3 days, if anything. But when you're cashing out to PayPal these days, it's usually expected to be usually instant. Sometimes it might take up to a day when they're like super backed up, or even a week. But like I said, I think it's a pretty hefty requirement to be able to cash out instantly just to do 30 surveys a month. But here's my most recent cash out that I did with branded surveys, just to show you that it's paid me and it is a legit app. So the best way that I think you'll earn from this app is probably the daily poll or the surveys. The only reason why I mentioned the daily poll is because it's super easy to do for 5 cents a day and it's guaranteed, you know. You just open the app, scroll all the way to the bottom, and then you do the multiple choice and you're guaranteed 5 cents a day. And then the surveys, like you do get decent surveys from it every couple of hours or every time you check it every couple of days or so. And you'll get the occasional like high paying survey for the time that's required. But I just don't like that it's locked to like 3 surveys a day, like I said. And I'm just going to mention some of the gripes before I close this review off. One of the biggest gripe I have is I feel like the app focuses too much on kind of like the gold badge. You know, when you get the gold badge, you have to do 30 surveys a day or 30 surveys a month. And to retain that badge every month, you have to do 30 surveys every single month. And you can't get disqualified from those surveys. So to also get like the 19% like highest tier of gold, you would need to do 35 surveys a single day. I don't remember the last time I've ever done 35 surveys in a single like app, just because it's really hard to get like really good paying or a constant feed of like good paying surveys and like decent paying surveys on a single app, which is why it's usually a good idea to have multiple survey apps, just because it raises your chances to have a good survey. And sometimes you get the same survey on like multiple different apps, which is great, you know? And it's also locking you behind not being able to get instant cash outs. And instant cash outs, in my opinion, aren't that big of a thing just because you're always getting your money still if it's a legit app, you know, even if it pays you like a couple days late. And, you know, doing the surveys, like I said, you're blocked to 3 surveys. You could get very unlucky and you could literally get the long, like 3 long surveys and they pay you like very low. And it's just, you know, constantly giving you those like really bad surveys, and you're just locked behind those compared to like other survey sites where you can get where you can go to like a dedicated survey page and you have like all the surveys available to you and you can decide, oh, you know, I know these are all the surveys that I have and I don't have to hope or guess that like, oh, maybe there's going to be eventually a good survey. You know, it's kind of like that meme, you know, when you quit too early and you're about to hit the diamond or something. It's usually used for gambling, but that's besides the point. The next thing that I have is probably the games. I think they're very low paying. Like these are probably lower paying than, or some of these games are lower paying than Playtime Rewards. And Playtime Rewards, in my opinion, is generally one of the lowest earning methods apart from like some crypto apps. And it's just not worth doing. You know, like you have to be a new user for these, and it's usually better to do like a higher paying offer for these, even if you like it takes a day for you to do like a couple of the offers, you'll generally get paid more for doing that one day compared to like a lot of these other offers on this app. And it has like really slow tracking, like I said, just not a big fan. It just feels unreliable to me. And it's just a very short deadline as well, so you know, that tied together is just not good. But anyways, just to close off this review, just some closing thoughts. Would I recommend the app? I don't know. Maybe, like probably not. I think this would probably be like a kind of like a back pocket app that you have. Like you could check in daily for like 5 cents easily, and then you can check in like maybe like every couple of days or even every couple of hours just to see if there's like a decent paying survey. And like I said, if you don't like or if you don't mind doing surveys, it's usually better to have as many survey apps as you can just because it raises your chances of getting a good survey to do. And, apart from that, I can't really recommend anything else on this app. Like, nothing really stands out for me to want to recommend this app. So, like I said, at the very least, I will probably recommend this as like a second back pocket kind of app. I don't know what to coin the term, but anyways, if you want to try the app for yourself, I'll have my referral link in the description if you want to support me a little bit. But if you're looking for any more beer money apps, feel free to check out the rest of my reviews on this channel or even on the blog. You can check out my monthly earning pages to see what apps I can use on a month basis as well. But I'm gonna get back to playing Suikoden 2. Take care.